40 nations, 1.5 billion people, $30 trillion, and the United States is not invited. I need you to understand what just happened, because while everyone was watching the Supreme Court, while the House was fighting over tariffs, while Trump was threatening to block bridges and pick fights with allies, something massive was quietly taking shape on the other side of the world. And today, I can finally tell you exactly what it is. The European Union and the Trans-Pacific Trade Bloc just launched formal negotiations to build the largest economic partnership in modern history. Nearly 40 countries, stretching from Tokyo to Berlin to Ottawa to Singapore, are now actively working to connect their economies in ways that would fundamentally reshape global trade. And here's the part that should terrify the White House. They are doing it specifically to bypass the United States. But here is where it gets complicated. This is not some vague diplomatic gesture. This is not leaders posing for photos and making empty promises. Reports confirm that the inaugural EU-CPTPP trade and investment dialogue has already taken place. Ministers from all member nations gathered to establish working frameworks across 5 key priority areas, including trade diversification, digital trade, supply chain resilience, and reform of the entire global trade environment. Now, what I am about to show you changes the whole picture, because at the center of all this stands Canada, not on the sidelines, not as a junior partner, at the center, leading. When Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney stood before world leaders at Davos last month, he did not mince words. He told them directly that we are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. He said great powers are using economic integration as weapons, tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. He was describing American policy under this administration without ever saying the name. And then he announced exactly what Canada intended to do about it. He said Canada is championing efforts to build a bridge between the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the European Union, a new trading bloc that would represent 1.5 billion people. He said middle powers must act together because if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. That was not rhetoric. That was a preview of what was already happening behind closed doors. Documents reveal that Canada has been spearheading these discussions for months. Officials confirm they have had productive conversations with partners around the world. Japan has already signaled strong interest. European trade officials are describing themselves as super keen to pursue this deal. Wait, it gets worse. For America, I mean. Let me break down exactly what this alliance would actually do and why it represents the most significant shift in global trade architecture since the creation of the World Trade Organization. The core mechanism at the heart of this alliance is something called cumulation through shared rules of origin. Now that sounds technical, but let me explain why it matters. Right now, the EU and CPTPP operate under separate trade rules. If a Japanese company builds a car part, ships it to Germany for assembly, then wants to sell that car in Canada, it faces layers of bureaucracy at every border. Different rules, different tariffs, different compliance requirements. Supply chains get fragmented, costs get passed to consumers. But here's what nobody is talking about. If these two blocs agree on shared rules of origin, a product made with components from any member country would qualify for preferential treatment across the entire partnership. Japanese parts in a German car sold to Canada? Seamless. Vietnamese textiles processed in Italy for the Australian market? No barriers. Supply chains would flow freely across nearly 40 countries. This is what supply chain resilience actually looks like. Not dependence on one country, not vulnerability to one man's social media posts, diversification across dozens of stable, reliable trading partners. Now let me tell you why this is happening right now, because the timing is not accidental. When Liberation Day tariffs launched last April, duties ranging from 10 to 50% hit imports from nearly every trading partner. Emergency powers that 2 courts have since ruled exceeded presidential authority were used to fundamentally alter the global trading system overnight. The Supreme Court is expected to issue its ruling on the legality of these measures any day now. Justices appeared skeptical during oral arguments that such sweeping tariff authority exists under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. But here is the part that kept me up last night. The damage to America's reputation as a reliable partner has already been done regardless of what the court decides. Companies that built their supply chains around American trade suddenly found themselves paying tariffs they never expected. Countries that negotiated in good faith saw their deals threatened with termination overnight. The message the world received was clear. If you build your economy around the United States, you are vulnerable to chaos. You are vulnerable to unpredictability. You are vulnerable to policies that change with a single post on social media. Carney saw this coming before almost anyone else. At Davos, he laid out the alternative. Diversify, rebuild sovereignty, unite the middle powers. Do not wait for a world you wish existed. Take on the world as it actually is. And that is exactly what is happening now.